There are wounds you can't see on the skin, but that slowly wear down the soul over time. One of them is allowing your own children to cross boundaries they should never have crossed. Because in old age, what hurts most are not the wrinkles or the gray hairs, but the feeling of losing your dignity at the hands of those you love the most. And as harsh as it may sound, there are behaviors that, if tolerated, turn you into a passive spectator of your own life. Think for a moment. How many times have you stayed silent out of fear of making things uncomfortable? How many times have you accepted unfair treatment simply because it came from your children? The uncomfortable truth is that what you quietly allow today becomes an invisible chain that ties down your freedom tomorrow. And if what you want is to grow old with serenity and respect, you cannot keep opening the door to behaviors that destroy your peace. I'm Gabriel, and in this video, I'm not going to sugarcoat my words. Together, we're going to go through 9 attitudes that should never be tolerated in your children if you want to preserve your dignity. I don't speak from resentment, but from the clarity that Stoicism brings. Setting boundaries is a form of love, both for yourself and for them. Stay until the end, because the last attitude is not only the most dangerous, it's also the one that, if you manage to stop in time, can give you back the peace you've been searching for all these years. This is the start of a journey that may feel uncomfortable, but it can also set you free. Number 1, when your children believe your time belongs to them. This is one of the most silent and destructive traps a parent can face in later life. There comes a moment when children, often without realizing it, start treating their parents as if they were resources available at any time, as if their time had no value of its own. They ask for favors, assign you tasks, expect you to always be ready to meet their needs, and the worst part, they act as if it were a natural obligation. But time, at this stage of life, is not infinite. Every minute is part of the life that still belongs to you, and if you give it away without awareness, you'll end up living for others instead of yourself. Picture your life as an hourglass. The grains that have fallen will never return, and the ones still at the top grow fewer with each moment. What happens if, instead of using them for what brings you peace, you spend them satisfying whims or filling voids that aren't yours to fill? What happens is that one day you wake up and realize you never lived for yourself, but rather to sustain an unfair dynamic. Helping your children is not the mistake. What's harmful is when they assume your time is a right, they hold over you as if your days were public property. Stoic philosophy is clear on this point. Seneca reminded us that the greatest treasure we have is time, because it is the only thing that never returns. And if you don't direct that time with clarity, others will direct it for you. Your children may love you, but they can also fall into the comfort of believing you'll always be available. That habit, if left unchecked, ends up stealing your dignity. Because what begins as an occasional favor can turn into a pattern where your life is reduced to being on call. Think about a real example. Maybe you once canceled a personal plan because your child suddenly called needing something. Maybe you skipped rest because they asked you to go with them, even though you were tired. In the moment, the gesture may seem harmless, but repeated over time it becomes an unspoken rule. Your life is arranged around theirs. And when you reach that point, what you've lost is not only freedom, but respect. The boundary you need to set is not a cold wall, but a firm declaration. Your time is valuable, and though you share it with love, it cannot be taken as an obligation. Some will understand it right away, others may resist, but the essential thing is that you are the one who sets the standard. If you don't, the message you send is that your life doesn't count, and that is the root of lost dignity in old age. Remember this: love is not slavery, and endless availability is not affection, it's exhaustion. Those who respect you understand that your time is as sacred as theirs. And when you begin to defend it yourself, you give your children the most important lesson they can receive, that true maturity is measured by how we value what can never be recovered. Number 2, indifference disguised as affection. This is one of the hardest blows because it hides behind gestures that look like love, but deep down, leave a void greater than absence itself. It shows up when your children call you quickly just to check a box, when they visit in a rush without truly being present, or when they say, "I love you so much," while their actions prove you're at the very bottom of their priorities. That mix of sweet words and distant behavior is one of the subtlest forms of emotional neglect, because it forces you to be grateful for crumbs as if they were a feast. Picture a common scene. A child visits you on a Sunday but spends the whole afternoon glued to their phone, answering messages, laughing with others, while you sit there waiting for them to lift their eyes and truly listen to you. When they leave, they give you a hug and say, "It was so nice to see you," but inside, you feel they were never really with you. That is indifference disguised as affection, and if you don't recognize it, you end up accepting a hollow relationship as if it were genuine love, forgetting that you deserve something much deeper. The Stoics spoke of the difference between what appears to be and what truly is. Epictetus warned that some things look like virtues, but are actually disguised vices. The same applies here. The superficial gesture looks like love, but it's a way of keeping you calm without real commitment. If you don't notice it, you fall into the trap of justifying your children with phrases like, "They're busy," or "at least they thought of me." But the truth is that love without presence doesn't sustain you, and dignity erodes when you feel forced to thank what doesn't actually honor you. Remember this: indifference hurts more when it comes wrapped in smiles. Because when you receive it, you start doubting yourself, wondering if you're exaggerating, if maybe you should settle. But no, it's not exaggeration. The soul knows when it is truly being heard and when it isn't. And no matter how short the encounter, if there is real attention, you feel it. The problem isn't the lack of time, but the lack of presence. Accepting indifference as love is like drinking salt water, thinking it quenches your thirst. For a moment it deceives you, but afterward it dries out your spirit even more. And if you tolerate it again and again, you start convincing yourself that it's the most you can ever receive. But you weren't born to beg for affection. You are here to remind yourself and your loved ones that love without respect and presence doesn't deserve to be called love. What you must make clear is that you'd rather have a short, sincere visit where they look you in the eye and truly listen than long hours of absent company. Because dignity isn't measured in the number of encounters, but in the quality of presence. And when you begin to defend that truth, you stop thanking indifference and start demanding the quiet respect your heart needs. Number 3, emotional blackmail that robs you of your peace. We've reached a delicate point because this is no longer about carelessness or indifference, but about conscious or unconscious manipulation that can drain you until you're left empty. Emotional blackmail shows up when your children use phrases like, "If you don't help me, it's because you don't love me," or "Don't say I didn't come to you later," or even long silences that make you feel guilty for setting a boundary. It's a cruel game that puts your love on a scale, as if you had to constantly prove it through sacrifice. Imagine one day you decide to say no, maybe because you're tired, because your body is asking for rest, or simply because you want to dedicate time to yourself. And right away, you get a cold response, an annoyed look, a veiled reproach, a message that creates distance. That reaction is not love, it's blackmail. The worst part is that if you allow it, every time you try to defend your peace, you'll feel like you have to pay the price of guilt. And little by little, you become an emotional hostage inside your own family. Stoic philosophy offers a powerful key to facing this kind of manipulation. Epictetus reminded us that no one can harm your soul without your consent. What others say or do is external, but how you receive it is your choice. Blackmail only works if you accept it as valid currency. When you decide that your dignity is worth more than a reproach, the other person's power dissolves. The real test is not how much you give in, but how firmly you can stand in your truth without fearing rejection. Let me suggest something practical. The next time a child tries to guilt you into giving in, take a deep breath and respond with one calm phrase. I love you, but this time I can't. Don't explain further, don't defend yourself, don't argue, because every extra word is ground you give away. Holding silence after setting a boundary is, in itself, an act of power. At first, it will feel difficult, but over time, you'll see that you don't need to justify every decision in order to be respected. Many parents in their later years believe the only way to keep their children close is by always giving in. But the opposite happens. The more you submit to blackmail, the less they respect you. And when you stop falling into that trap, even if some are uncomfortable at first, you end up teaching them the most valuable lesson. True love is not bought with forced sacrifices, it's sustained by mutual respect. If what you've heard so far resonates with you, if you feel these words are shedding light on places where before there was only unease, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit like. I'd also love for you to share in the comments which country you're listening from and write the phrase, "My well-being is sacred." Because this message is not theory, it's a call to reclaim the peace you should never have given away. Number 4, the silent abuse of your generosity. Here we step into a space where love gets confused with obligation and kindness turns into a trap. There are children who, without conscious malice, have learned that you'll always be there to give money, favors, your time, your energy. And the most painful part is that this giving, something that should be a free and dignified gesture, ends up becoming an automatic expectation. As if your generosity weren't a gift, but an endless account they can access whenever they want. Picture the scene. Your child asks for a loan, promising they'll pay it back soon, but that day never comes. Or they ask you for a small favor that actually interrupts your rest, your plans, your peace of mind. And when you try to say no, you hear things like, "But you've always helped us," or "What good is keeping it if it's not for us?" That's the silent abuse, turning your giving into an eternal debt. What you once offered out of love now feels like an obligation that never ends. The Stoics warned about voluntary slavery, the kind where you tie yourself with invisible chains, believing you're doing the right thing. Seneca said there is nothing sadder than a man who doesn't know where charity ends and self-destruction begins. Giving is not a mistake, but giving until you erase yourself is. And when your children learn they can ask without limits, what you lose isn't just money or energy. You lose respect, authority, and the right to be seen as someone with needs of your own. A simple example makes it clear. Maybe you saved a little money for a trip or for your own well-being, and without realizing it, you gave it to a child who asked in urgency. The trip never happened, the money never returned, and your wish was forgotten. That loss wasn't only material, it was emotional. Your dream was sacrificed for someone who didn't value the sacrifice. And the worst part is, if you don't set limits, the story repeats. Again and again, until what's left of your life no longer belongs to you. The message you must carve into your heart is this: generosity only makes sense when it comes from freedom, not from pressure. Giving out of love dignifies you, but giving out of guilt destroys you. And when you learn to say this far and no further, you teach your children that your love doesn't need to be proven with endless sacrifices. You teach them that you are a person before you are a provider, that you have the right to protect what's yours and to care for yourself. Remember this: abuse doesn't always come with shouting or demands. Sometimes it hides behind sweet words, trust, or habit. But every time your generosity is treated as a duty, you're losing a piece of your dignity. And what today looks like a small favor can tomorrow become the difference between living in peace or living as a resource at the service of others. Number 5, the lack of respect for your decisions. This is one of the deepest wounds a parent can experience because it's not about money or favors, it's about your ability to decide for yourself. When children comment on how you should dress, who you should spend time with, what to do with your house, your money, or even your free time, they are crossing a boundary that doesn't belong to them. That's not love or care, it's a form of control disguised as concern. And if you allow it, you end up feeling like your life no longer belongs to you, as if every step needs approval, as if you were a child all over again. Imagine you decide to sell something you no longer use, take a trip with friends, start a new hobby, or even just stay home because that's what you prefer. Instead of being happy for you, your children look at you with suspicion and say things like, "Why do that at your age?" or "Better save that money, don't spend it." What looks like advice is actually a denial of your right to choose. And when that repeats itself, you start doubting yourself, silencing your desires, postponing your plans. Little by little, you stop living on your own terms and become someone who simply follows others' directions. Stoic philosophy teaches that true freedom doesn't lie in doing whatever you want, but in not depending on someone else's will to live in alignment with yourself. Marcus Aurelius put it clearly, "The greatest slavery is to subject your life to the opinion of others." And that's what happens every time your children invalidate your decisions under the excuse of protecting you. What looks like affection is, in reality, a way of stealing the autonomy you've worked so hard to preserve. Perhaps you've already experienced it. You stayed silent when you decided not to lend more money and someone in your family called you selfish. Or you chose to rest instead of babysitting your grandchildren and you were met with reproach. In those moments, it's not just about that one decision. It's your very right to lead your life that's being questioned. And if you accept that game, your will withers. The most dangerous part is not losing the decision itself, but losing the confidence in your ability to decide. You must remember something essential. Your children have the right to share their opinions, but not to impose them. They can suggest, but not control. You don't owe anyone explanations for every choice you make in your later years. You've lived too much to still be asking for permission. And each time you reaffirm your right to decide, you strengthen your dignity and send a powerful message. You are still the owner of your life. The lack of respect for your decisions is not a minor detail. It's a direct attack on your identity, your autonomy, your very being. And as long as you don't put a stop to it, you'll remain trapped in someone else's script. Today, you can change that story. Because aging with dignity doesn't mean living up to their expectations. It means living what you choose, with your head held high and your soul at peace. Number 6. Becoming the eternal babysitter for your grandchildren. This touches a sensitive chord because grandchildren are a source of love and joy, but they can also, without meaning to, become the anchor that robs you of freedom if your children turn that bond into a permanent obligation. There is a vast difference between enjoying the company of your grandchildren and being reduced to the role of a free, always available caregiver. When that happens, your time, your energy, and even your right to rest are subordinated to someone else's schedule. Picture this. Your children call, often saying, "It's just for a little while," and that little while turns into an entire afternoon, several days, and eventually a routine where you no longer decide what to do with your life. The most painful part isn't the physical exhaustion, but the feeling that your role as a grandparent has turned into an extension of your old duties as a parent. It's as if life denied you the right to a well-deserved rest, to your own space after years of sacrifice. And the most serious part is that if you don't set boundaries, your love for your grandchildren becomes tangled with resentment toward those who take advantage of your availability. The Stoics taught that duty must walk hand in hand with virtue, not with slavery. Seneca said nothing degrades the soul more than doing the right thing out of obligation instead of choice. Caring for your grandchildren can be a beautiful act, but only if it's born of your desire, not of your children's pressure. When you accept the role of eternal babysitter, you're not just giving up your time, you're allowing yourself to be reduced to a role that does not honor your dignity. A simple, everyday example makes this clear. You know a grandmother who dreamed of traveling with her friends but never could because she always had to watch the grandchildren. Years later, the trips became a frustrated dream, and her health weakened. It wasn't the grandchildren's fault, but rather the silent trap of turning love into obligation. That story repeats itself in many homes, where what should be a joyful bond becomes an unfair burden. The solution is to firmly draw the line. I will take care of my grandchildren when I can and when I want to, but not because it's my duty. That phrase, though uncomfortable at first, is liberating, because it shows that you love them, but you also respect yourself. And it teaches your children that your role as a parent has ended and that now your time belongs to you. Remember this, grandchildren don't need martyrs, they need grandparents who are present and happy. And you cannot be happy if you live exhausted, resentful, or with the constant feeling of having lost your freedom. Becoming the eternal babysitter isn't love, it's surrender. And you're not in this stage of life to surrender, but to live with the fullness you truly deserve. Number 7, the invasion of your privacy as if it didn't matter. This may be one of the most invisible wounds because it doesn't always come through shouting or reproach, but through everyday gestures that make you feel your space is no longer yours. Your children walk into your room without knocking, go through your things without asking, comment on what you buy, what you watch, even on who you welcome into your own home. And they justify it with excuses like, "It's for your own good," or "We just want to help," when in reality what they're doing is denying you your most basic right, the right to own your privacy. Picture this. You keep a notebook where you write your thoughts, your memories, your prayers. One day you find out someone read it without asking, as if your words were public property. Or think of the discomfort of being questioned about why you spent money on a book, a piece of clothing, or a small treat for yourself, as if your life had to be managed by them. That intrusion, even when disguised as care, is a quiet form of disrespect that slowly erodes your dignity. The Stoics spoke of the importance of cultivating your inner world as a sacred garden. Epictetus said, "No one can enter your soul without your consent." But when you allow others to invade your privacy, you give up not only your physical space, but also your spiritual space. It's like opening the gates of your garden so others can pull out the flowers without understanding what they mean to you. And the worst part is that if you tolerate it, you start to believe you don't have the right to protest. Think about the contradiction. Your children, who fiercely protect their independence and privacy as adults, sometimes deny those same conditions to their parents. What they consider sacred for themselves, they treat as dispensable in you. And here lies the uncomfortable truth. If you don't defend your boundaries, no one else will. Privacy is not a luxury, it's a pillar of dignity. The practice required is simple but firm. Start saying, "This is mine," without guilt. Lock your room if you need to, decide what you share and what you don't, create distance when your space is invaded. This isn't about building hostile walls, but about remembering that your life is still your own, even if you've already given everything you could as a parent. The invasion of your privacy is a subtle way of telling you that you no longer matter as an individual. And every time you defend your space, you send the opposite message. that you are still a person with the right to privacy, to secrets, to decisions that don't need explanation. Because if you give up your privacy, you also give up your deepest freedom, and aging with dignity means never handing over that final key that unlocks the doors of your life. Number 8, the disregard for your financial boundaries. This is an area where love and responsibility often get mixed up because many children believe that what you have should always be available to them. They borrow money with no intention of paying it back, suggest you spend your savings on problems that aren't yours, or even make decisions about your property as if they were the owners of your future. The most painful part isn't the money itself. It's the feeling that what you worked so hard to save is no longer respected as yours, but treated as a resource waiting to be used by others. Imagine you spent years setting aside a small amount for a dream trip, to improve your home, or simply to secure your peace of mind. Then, one of your children shows up with a problem and tells you their needs are more urgent than yours. And if you hesitate, you hear reproaches. What's the point of saving at your age? We need it more than you. You've already lived your life. That kind of talk is cruel because it places your well-being as something secondary, as if you no longer had the right to enjoy what cost you so much effort to earn. The Stoics were clear in pointing out that freedom begins when we stop depending on what others think about our possessions. Marcus Aurelius taught that true wealth isn't in how much you own, but in how calmly you can decide what to do with what you have. Allowing your children to control your money or influence every expense is handing over not just your finances, but your independence. And without independence, dignity withers. Perhaps you've already experienced this. You gave away your savings thinking they would be returned, but they never were. Or you gave up a personal dream to solve someone else's problem. And you did it out of love, yes, but also out of fear. Fear of being judged selfish, fear of losing closeness. Yet what really gets lost when you give without measure is your self-respect. Every time your financial boundaries are ignored, the hidden message is that your effort no longer matters. The lesson here is clear. Your money is a tool for your peace, not for carrying the weight of someone else's irresponsibility. Helping is noble when it comes from your own will, but letting your resources be used without respect is opening the door to dependency and abuse. Saying no to an unfair expense is, in reality, saying yes to your right to live with dignity. Remember this: there is no greater inheritance than a father or mother who reaches old age standing tall without depending on anyone. If your children don't respect your financial boundaries, they don't just take your money, they take away your chance to live your final stage in freedom. And that's a debt they will never be able to repay. Number 9, ignoring your right to choose your own peace. We've reached the final point, and perhaps the deepest one, because this is not about money, favors, or time. It's about what gives meaning to your life at this stage. Your children, sometimes with the best of intentions and other times out of habit, may try to decide how you should live your later years, who you spend time with, what activities you do, how you use your days. The most painful part is when, if you choose silence, rest, or distance, they interpret it as coldness, selfishness, or a mistake that needs correcting. That lack of respect for your inner peace is an invisible wound that slowly dims the dignity you deserve to carry. Picture this. One day, you decide not to attend a family gathering because you want to stay home in peace, reading, praying, or simply resting. What should be a legitimate choice turns into a reason for reproach. You're isolating yourself. You weren't like this before. You're leaving us behind. Those comments don't speak about you. They reveal your children's inability to accept that your life no longer has to revolve around their expectations. Your right to peace is as sacred as their right to freedom, but if you don't defend it, they will keep treating it as if it were just a whim. Stoic philosophy teaches us that peace doesn't depend on external things, but on how we choose to respond. Epictetus said that freedom is achieved when we learn to live according to our own nature and not the demands of others. That truth is more urgent than ever in later life. If your peace always depends on someone else's approval, it will never be true peace. Only when you learn to say, "This silence is mine, this rest is mine, this calm belongs to me," do you begin to live with the dignity you long for. The cruelest part of ignoring your right to peace is that it forces you to keep playing the role of caregiver, counselor, or supporter, even when your soul is asking for stillness. You end up living a borrowed life, designed to keep others comfortable while your spirit slowly fades. And here lies the paradox. The more you give up your peace for others, the less they value your sacrifice. The challenge is daring to hold on to your calm even if others don't understand it. Choosing the nap instead of the gathering, prayer instead of noise, a walk alone instead of forced company. It's not about breaking ties, it's about teaching that your peace is not negotiable. And when you do that, even if some are upset at first, you plant in them a lesson they will eventually understand. That true maturity is not about always pleasing, but about living in alignment with your soul. Aging with dignity doesn't mean living the way your children expect, it means living the way your spirit dictates. If they don't understand it now, one day they will. Because peace that is chosen, defended, and lived is the greatest inheritance you can leave behind. Whoever ignores it doesn't just lose your company, they also lose the example of what it means to live with greatness until the very last day. We've reached the end of this journey, and if you're still here, it's because you know these 9 attitudes aren't just small family details, but silent wounds that can strip you of your dignity if you allow them. Maybe it hurt to recognize some of them. Maybe you saw yourself reflected in more than one situation. But that discomfort is a sign that it's not too late. Because old age is not a synonym for submission or resignation, it's the moment when life asks you for clarity and strength to defend what truly matters: your peace, your time, your inner freedom. What you heard today is not a call to resentment, but to courage. Setting boundaries with your children doesn't mean you stop loving them. It means teaching them by example that respect has no age and dignity is not negotiable. Real love doesn't grow out of abuse, it grows out of balance. And when you choose to defend your space, your privacy, your decisions, and your peace, you reveal the wisest and strongest version of yourself, the version your children and grandchildren will one day remember with respect, even if they don't understand it at first. I want to thank you for staying until the very end. Not everyone dares to face these truths, and if you did, it's because there is a strength within you that is still alive, refusing to fade away. I invite you to subscribe, hit like, and share in the comments which country you're watching from. And if this message resonated with you, write the phrase, "My peace is not negotiable." That will be our way of recognizing each other as a community that refuses to give up and continues to choose to live with dignity. And remember, the world may change, children may drift away, the body may age, but your right to peace and inner freedom never disappears. Defend it as the most sacred thing you have. Because in the end, aging with dignity is not a privilege, it's a decision. And today, you've already taken the first step to uphold it.